How much money have you made in 2020 simply by watching the value of your home rise? According to the latest figures from the Building Society nationwide, the average home value has shot up this year by 7.5%. That's the fastest pace of growth for 6 years. I bought my first property back in 2002, a one-bedroom apartment in a market town in West Sussex. The timing was great in terms of relatively low interest rates and decent price growth. For my first few years of home ownership, I was making more money from those price rises than I was from my employment. That's an unusual set of circumstances and certainly hasn't been the case in every year since. In fact, since we bought our current home in 2005, the annualised growth over the past 15 years has been fairly subdued. But 2020 has been a great year for property prices on average, even since the onset of the pandemic in March. In this video, I'm taking a look at what's driving home prices higher this year, why next year may be a completely different story, and why I'm convinced that we're set to see a regional rebalancing of property prices during the next decade. Stay tuned for that. Hi everyone, I'm Bamford, a chartered financial planner at Informed Choice. On this channel, I talk about personal finance, investing and happiness. I make these videos to help you become wealthier and happier. If that sounds like a great result, click on that little red subscribe button to become part of our subscriber community. It's completely free and you'll never miss an episode. So property prices up by an average of 7.5% in 2020 and up by 5.3% since the pandemic really kicked off in March. How on earth has that happened? The two big drivers seem to be policy measures designed to incentivise home buyers, but also changing preferences in terms of where and how we want to live. And it's these changing preferences that could, in the future, contribute towards what I think we'll see, a regional rebalancing of property prices. I'll come back to that in just a moment. According to Nationwide, house prices rose by an average of 0.8% in December compared to a month earlier. It means the average property price is now £230,920. Robert Gardner, who is chief economist at Nationwide, said the furlough and self-employment income support schemes provided vital support for the labour market, while a host of measures helped to keep down the cost of borrowing and keep the supply of credit flowing. He also explained that the stamp duty holiday helped to stimulate demand, in some cases bringing forward plans to move home. Another factor was the pandemic response from mortgage lenders, coordinated by the Financial Conduct Authority, offering mortgage payment holidays for people financially impacted by the coronavirus. This financial support from lenders allowed more people to stay in their homes rather than being forced to sell. What's quite interesting about these latest house price figures is how strongly the year appears to be ending. If you put your house on the market now and started looking for a new home, you're unlikely to benefit from the stamp duty holiday, which ends in March. The length of the conveyancing process means it's likely to be well into the spring before you exchange contracts. But that loss of stamp duty benefit doesn't appear to be deterring property market activity as we bring 2020 to a close. So policy measures, one factor inflating house prices, the other is our changing requirements from property. And this is the one that I don't think is going away anytime soon. In fact, I'm convinced that longer term, it could result in a rebalancing of property prices. So allow me to explain that theory. The pandemic has prompted a lot of people to rethink their living requirements and living preferences. We've been very fortunate throughout this pandemic, living in a sleepy corner of Surrey, walking distance from a range of independent food retailers, and with miles of footpaths through ancient woodlands right on our doorstep. It's been the perfect place to live through a global pandemic. But I know that for many people, living arrangements since March have been seriously challenging. Living in cities or towns, or in property without the space for working from home, are both factors prompting more people to move somewhere else. Estate agents tell us that there is high and rising demand for rural properties, properties with lots of outdoor space, properties with space for home offices. It's these changing property preferences, along with the looming introduction of fully autonomous self-driving cars, that I think is going to do something extraordinary to regional price variations. My theory is this: why live in a city like London, when you can A, effectively work remotely, the pandemic's proved that's possible, and B, hop in the back seat of your self-driving car and get driven to your office in a city when you actually need to work there. All of a sudden, higher property prices in London and the southeast of England look unsustainable. More affordable property in arguably the more attractive parts of the country, for example by the coast in the southwest of England, becomes a more viable option. I believe we're going to see huge swathes of the population choose lifestyle over convenience for employment in the coming years. But what about in the short term? What are we likely to see for property prices next year? We know that interest rates are going to stay low. There's little prospects of an interest rate hike in 2021 as the economy hopefully recovers from the pandemic. We might start to see rate rises if price inflation edges up, but only if that is a rise in core inflation measures rather than more temporary drivers such as higher food prices in the short term due to any Brexit disruption. We know that the stamp duty holiday is scheduled to finish at the end of March 2021, but as I mentioned earlier in this video, it's probably too late already to take advantage of that stamp duty holiday due to the length of the conveyancing process typically. Will the Treasury extend the stamp duty holiday or even introduce a different incentive for the property market? Well, anything's possible, and this government does seem rather enthusiastic about supporting the residential property market. We know that unemployment levels are likely to continue rising in the early part of next year, probably peaking in the middle of next year. This latest raft of Tier 4 restrictions for many parts of England will no doubt be the final nail in the coffin for a large number of businesses forced to close. Yes, there's a furlough scheme, and yes, there are grants available for rate-paying businesses, but that's not going to entirely prevent a surge in unemployment. Something else that's likely in spring 2021 is the introduction of changes to capital gains tax in the budget. I've covered this in a previous video, which I'll link up here somewhere, but essentially it might encourage some buy-to-let landlords to offload their property portfolios ahead of the budget to pay a lower rate of capital gains tax. Again, though, time is a factor here. Nationwide says the outlook for the property market is highly uncertain, with Robert Gardner saying much will depend on how the pandemic and the measures to contain it evolve, as well as the efficacy of policy measures implemented to limit the damage to the wider economy. Which all brings me to this final thought. Is your home really an investment? I started the video by talking about making money from your home when prices rise, but I'm a big believer that your main residence is not primarily an investment. After all, you need somewhere to live, you need a roof over your head. When we look at examples of people downsizing in retirement, the money freed up from selling larger property and moving into somewhere smaller, somewhere more manageable, is rarely enough to make a meaningful difference to retirement plans. Rising property prices are a big help when it comes to levels of consumer confidence, and the British economy is going to need all the consumer confidence it can get in 2021 to help pull it out of its current economic slump. But I would urge you not to view your home as an investment asset in the first instance, as nice as it is to think about rising prices putting more pounds, indirectly at least, in your pocket. What's your outlook for property prices in 2021? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching this video. Until next time, I'm Martin Bamford, and remember, when it comes to your money, the more you know, the faster it can grow.